assassins or bruisers, she can also kite them pretty effectively because she does have a lot of escape potential with her ultimate. She can, for about 2 seconds, have that invincibility frame that no one can get on top of her. So that provides a lot of protection. And also, we did mention earlier that Rakan is one of the priority pick and bans. And we do see Rakan banned more often than being picked. But if that champion does go through the pick and ban phase, then it's going to be a pretty potent combo in the bot lane.
Yeah, and to add to that, while we're on the topic of champions, we've also seen the trend where bot laners would not take heal, even though there were recent nerfs to the teleport summoner spell. Majority of AD carries would take teleport instead of defensive summoner spells to add more map pressure. So that's one more thing that we have to watch out for once these games do begin. Okay, so
we've seen quite a lot of superstars during the group stage, but I'd like to think, who do you think is the most potent to look out for? Let's go ahead and start with Resurgence here from Crazy Apple.
Yeah, so for Resurgence, obviously I did mention earlier that it's Raven that we need to look out for from Team Resurgence because he's just been really, really consistently strong in the mid lane. And I would think we did see G4, for Secret, for Mega Esports, that he was also pretty good on the Rise and the Zoe pick. But when that was banned, it felt like he was kind of questionable on those other picks. We did see a really good performance on that Irelia, but I feel like the matchup in the mid lane between these two, Raven would probably come out on top just because he has a lot more champions that he can play around with. He can play the Zoe, he can also play the Rise, he can play the Orianna and the Azir. So he might be one of those players that it's really hard for the other team to target ban. At the same time, I really think we also need to look at Kra in the support position for Resurgence. He's been doing a lot of good plays, especially on that Pike. So if we do see the Pike pick on Kra, we might see a lot of roams that would allow Team Resurgence to get to the point in the mid game where they can just take control of the game with their superior macro and rotations.
Let's go ahead and go with the Kuala Lumpur Hunters next because I think these guys, it's such a widespread. Every time I see Kuala Lumpur Hunters, I kind of feel a little bit of a nerve wreck for who they're up against because it's so hard to pinpoint one person that you'd want to take away from.
Well,
but for you,
I can make it easy for you, actually.
Sure.
The person you pinpoint in Kuala Lumpur Hunters is their jungler, Caspiel. The
Yes.
way this guy jungles, it reminds me of a younger version of Peanut from the LCK. He jungles with this super cocky and aggressive style where instead of clearing camps or ganking, he actually just invades the enemy jungle and just tries to find the enemy jungle, basically kill him. So Caspiel, definitely the player to watch out for when you're looking at the Kuala Lumpur Hunters.
Yeah, just to add to that, we were talking with Kuala Lumpur Hunters yesterday, and when you look at Caspiel, we were asking Ozorveki who he thought was the primary shot caller of the team, and he did say that Caspiel is definitely the guy to look at in terms of making the calls for the team. He's always the guy who's making the calls, and what's interesting is Veki said that when Caspiel does well, we all do well. So he's definitely the guy that's kind of just like the driving force of the Kuala Lumpur Hunters, and everyone should definitely watch out for him.
Yeah, and I also think there's also another guy that we need to look at Kuala Lumpur Hunters aside from Caspiel and Ozorveki. We also need to look at RH in the mid lane because he does have a lot of unique picks, as Chiso mentioned earlier, that he does pick the Lulu, the Galio, and the Malzahar in the mid lane, which is very unique compared to what we've been seeing the Thai teams that have been picking. They've been usually picking that Rise in the mid lane. So I think Malzahar versus Rise is a really good matchup for the Malzahar because he just keeps on shoving the lane. It's practically a safe lane for him. So we'll see what RH can bring if ever he does get banned in terms of those champions. Can he play the more meta picks that we've been seeing in this tournament?
See, that's what I'm talking about. One guy mentions Caspiel, the other goes RH, the other goes Azora. So widespread right there. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and talk about our last two teams right here from Thailand. Mega Esports along with Ascension Gaming. Who do we want to look out for here?
Yeah, so for Mega, it's actually a bit difficult to point out a single person because, even after talking to them, it seems like they really look at each other as just the whole team. They all move. There's no primary shot caller for the team. They all make the plays. I remember Warlock saying how the way they see the shot calling especially is that every lane has their own perspective. So if someone sees an opportunity they think they should go for, they should just go for it. But I guess, on paper, I mean, you brought up Resurgence earlier, Raven, and his opponent is going to be Secret, so that's definitely a guy to look for at Team Mega.
So, last but not the least, of course, for our...
Oh,
Yes. So, one thing that I'd like to talk about here real quick, because I just got word that looks like we'll be getting things going, but quick shots right here. Just the overall picture so far. Who are you looking at to potentially become our champion of Globe Conquerors Manila, as well as your representatives? Quick fire, amplifier.
I mean, like I said, you know, ever since the beginning of this whole talk, it's really Ascension who are looking favored to win everything. That doesn't mean that it's going to be necessarily easy for them. I mean, Chisto mentioned earlier that KLH, you know, they're really looking to be the team that wants to kind of they're kind of like the combo breaker. They want to see themselves as that because ever since GPL 2018 spring, you know, they lost 3-1 and now they're looking to really redeem themselves in that matchup. But I still think, you know, seeing the whole group stages just happen, Ascension, they look like the better team.
Okay, so we have an Ascension so far. Crazy Apple.
I gotta agree that Ascension looks to be the strongest team right now in this tournament, but I think we gotta look at Team Resurgence at the same time because I believe they still have a lot of cards up their sleeve that they can show here. So if Resurgence does get to that final and probably would face against either Ascension or Kuala Lumpur Hunters, I'm betting that Team Resurgence can have a good show in that final.
Okay, so we have Ascension as well as Resurgence. Chisto, are you going to be sticking to one of these guys, or do you have your own thing going?
You know, Arctic, my mind, based on the results, is saying Ascension, but I have to go with my heart. I'm going to say I want Kuala Lumpur Hunters to represent our region in World. So, KLH for me.
So there you have it, guys. A little bit of a different opinion across the board for my friends right here. Gentlemen, thank you very much, by the way. But make sure to stay tuned because we'll still be discussing a hell lot more once we head into match one later on. But of course, ladies and gents, to everybody in the audience, we'd like to welcome you all once again to Globe Conquerors Manila, live right here at the Mo Arena. Of course, we'd like to thank our partners right here. It is presented by Globe, organized by Garena, with our major sponsor, Lenovo, powered by Intel, and special thanks to Bacchus Energy Drinks. So, enough of the chit-chat right here on the analyst desk. I'm going to go ahead and let our host take over in a teeny tiny bit. Once again, I'm Arctic. With me is Amplifier, Crazy, Apple, and Chisto. And let's get things on, guys. Have a great time here at Globe Conquerors Manila.
I want to make it back to Worlds again, represent my country, and prove to myself that I can still do it. But we still have unfinished business in Manila, and we'll have to deal with this first.
Before the tournament even started, everyone already counted us out. But we showed them that they can't underestimate us. We will do our best to make it to the finals, regardless of who stands in our way.
Everyone thought that because of the sudden roster changes, Ascension will be weaker this tournament. We're going to prove that Ascension is still the strongest team and we deserve to represent Southeast Asia at Worlds.
It didn't matter who are we going to face in the semi-finals. Our goal has always been the same, to show that Malaysia is a region to be reckoned with in Southeast Asia and make it to world. We won't settle for anything less.
Check mic. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Motivation Arena. That's right. And especially our summoners of Southeast Asia. Welcome to the biggest League of Legends event in the Philippines today. Make some noise if you're excited for today, ladies and gentlemen. What a privilege and what an honor it is to be here, and especially on behalf of Garena. This is the first time here at Moa Arena. How about that? Anyway, by way of introduction, my name is Eric Ty, but you can call me Eruption. My name is Eri but you can call me Discount Tyler 1. Oh, what? They just been calling me that, so I thought. What? Hold on. Who's Discount and who is Tyler 1? It's Tyler 1. Tyler. I could be Tyler 3, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that could work. Third world. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, are you guys excited for today, ladies and gentlemen? Come on, let us hear you guys. Come on. Eric, konti pa lang yan, ah. Konti pa lang yan. That's just everyone's simula lang. We're just starting, bro. We're just starting. Everyone's still on the way. We're still, alam mo naman tayo. But first, before we get started, just to give you guys an idea of course, what's at stake today for Globe Conquerors Manila for the tournament. The winner, of course, will win $100,000 from a $250. Yes. $150,000. That is correct. $100,000 from a $250,000 prize pool. And they'll also get to represent. They represent us at the Worlds. So they get to represent Southeast Asia for Worlds. So a lot at stake, Eric, Eruption, for the 4 teams that are here for this tournament for this weekend. So before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to, of course, thank everyone who's made this possible. Globe Conquerors Manila is presented to you by Globe and organized by Garena. Thank you. Together with our major sponsor, Lenovo, powered by Intel, and special thanks to Bacos Energy Drink. Let's get a feel of the stage. Oh, let's get a feel of the stage. Yeah, let's go. Let's see which it's LED. Look at that. Look, oh my, it's like I want to go into it. That's great. So safe. It's pretty good. It's solid. Let's see who are the loudest. Let's see who's the loudest in the area. Let's go. Magingay naman, make some noise, summoners. Let's hear ya. Pwede. That's a good start. Pwede. That's a good start. Pwede. You want to try them out? Try them out. Okay, here we go. Then we check. Summoners on this side. Make some noise! Man. Talo. Guys, ang galing talaga. Ang galing. Thank you. Let's try in the middle. Okay, let's go to the staff and production team and also our casts. Everyone here, yo, make some noise! Where did that come from? Listen, not everyone is here. We have practically got 90% of seating capacity. Everyone's on the way. Imagine how loud it's going to be today for Globe Conquerors Manila. So excited for the local law community. Let's show them a good event. So right now, why don't we get started and meet our teams? Yes! Are you ready?
Everyone's so low. Wants it. Krolix gonna go for the cleanup right there. Cleanup brigade is right a bit of damage. Dive straight in Emperor's Divide to lock them down. Raven is a god on this Azir. There's right. Krolix gonna get the dive in straight away onto Shiny, supported by Raven. Shockwave shut down onto that Fiora right there. Looks like hitting from the back. Whoa! So much damage. Great set coming in from Resurgence.
PAT cannot engage anymore. They're trying their best to take down the Mark. Krolix going in, but in the end, Resurgence, they're gonna end this game. Look at that, finally. It's gonna be the Singapore squad going in for the playoff.
From Singapore, Resurgence. Thank you very much, guys. Thailand have proudly made it to the playoffs.
Core are still very, very low. Warlock goes straight in, tries to go for Spade, but still, looks like Mega, they're not done just yet. Secret very, very confident. Oh! 1, 2, 3, triple kill, baby! Warlock finding low health targets in from Bigatron Esports' side. Mega Esports trying to go for more. Spade looks like will be their next target. It's a clear deal. They're going to secure the first seed towards the end of Group B. Congratulations. Dream at top, that's what they're looking for, plus our heads with the Aurelian Soul, incredible damage, Meganar, another Wolf Star, are you kidding me? It's KLH going for another mirror fight. Becky going for the flash in, quite low overhead, it's gonna be Becky, oh he's still alive, getting the double kill, it's gonna be and that's gonna be it. Welcome to the playoffs, because Kuala Lumpur Hunter is gonna take it.
Thank you very much, Kuala Lumpur Hunters. Good luck, senor. And now let's go into the last but not the least, Ascension Gaming!
Chucking down low, he's forced to back away. G4 with the ray. Gensekai forced to use the stasis, but G4 has the perfect timing there. And here comes the foliage, here comes the cut up there. Then running him down, focuses on to Gary. Labs respite, Gary couldn't reach the time. It's go time. Oh, Rich with a three-man knockout. Forge God coming in. Will it buy enough time? Recast. Aaron misses the Forge God. Can they survive in time? Rocky going in. Oh, we can go for the quadra here, and he's going to go for the wipeout. It's a good done deal, ladies and gents. Of course, we have the undefeated pride of Thailand going to go 6-0 towards the end of the day.
And now, bringing in the trophy for Globe Conquerors Manila as our recent 2018 Spring Champions, coming all the way from Thailand as a top seed, coming out of their group and ready to defend their title as reigning champions. Give it up for Ascension Gaming!
Raising that trophy proudly.
That's right, check that out.
Our defending champions for Spring 2018. Putting it back in its place.
So, ladies and gentlemen, summoners, let's get ready. We would like to officially start Globe Conquerors Manila! Casters, your time to shine.
And there we go. Thank you very much, Eruption and Eric. Once again, everybody, welcome to Globe Conquerors Manila live right here at the MOA Arena. We're currently on day one where we'll figure out which among our 4 teams will make it all the way to the finals tomorrow, which will determine who will win the $100,000 prize pool, out of our $250,000 prize pool. Of course, not just that, but a representation to 2018 Worlds. Of course, the bigger objective that each team is dying to get through this tournament. But of course, before we head into that, we'll be introducing ourselves. I'm Arctic, and joining me here, right here on the analyst desk is Amplifier, Crazy Apple, and Chisto. Gentlemen, welcome back. So this time around, we've already given our audience, as well as our live viewers, a little bit of a preview on what to expect, as well as a little bit of a background on our teams, as well as the tournament. This time, I'd like to go ahead and talk about the specifics here, because heading into Game 1, it is Ascension Gaming of Thailand versus the Kuala Lumpur Hunters of Malaysia that'll be taking our match 1 right now. So, Amplifier, first team right here, the big boys, Ascension Gaming, reigning defending champions that wish to defend their title, looking very strong through the group stage. Is there any way that that anybody can stop them at this point? And if so, what can they capitalize on? And what are some of the strengths that this particular team, the Malaysian team, has to look out for?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, we saw them walking down that aisle. They look super confident, and they definitely have the right to be. This team has just so much strengths. You know, first of all, we have to talk about the amount of exposure and experience that this team has. You look at Lloyd, you look at G4, these guys have been to Worlds before.
Yeah.
Back in 2015, Bangkok Titans, they were able to make it to Worlds, so they definitely have that experience coming for them. And just looking at the team as a whole, when you talk about strengths, we were talking, last night, and we definitely agree that we look at Rocky and G4 in particular in this mid and top lane. Yes, the solo laners are definitely the star players, and I remember I was talking to Azora Vecchi of KLH yesterday. He definitely agrees. He thinks that Rocky and G4 are definitely the guys to look at. These guys are just definitely the star players. You know, they definitely know how to get their team going, even when some of the members might fall behind. These guys know how to get going, and just, overall their gameplay, you've got the micro, you've got the macro, it's just everything's there. Although they do show some weaknesses, they did seem a bit shaky in some of their games, so even though they were undefeated throughout the group stage, it doesn't mean that they're not defeatable as a team. There's definitely ways that you can look to take them down.
We both agree. We both agree.
Yeah,
but Chiso,
We both agree with Amplifier that it's very difficult to pinpoint any glaring weaknesses on the side of Ascension, given that their results is 6-0 during the group stage. But if there is one specific thing that you have to watch out for, that Kuala Lumpur Hunters could exploit, it's Nixar in the AD carry position. We've seen multiple times where he gets picked off in the mid game, and it puts his team at such a disadvantage in terms of rotating across the map, since they rely so much on the split push. So I definitely think that's one thing we have to watch out for.
Yeah, and I do remember Amplifier mentioning last night when we were talking about their interview with Nixar, and he was talking about how they don't really feel that communication is much of a hindrance to them, even though he did mention that there's like a 1 to 2 second delay in terms of communication between the team and specifically to Nixar, which I kind of remember in that one game where Ascension Game essentially was trying to retreat from the red buff, and he was way far behind from his team, and his team just essentially got away with that blast cone, and it felt like there was communication lacking there, because at that point, it's like Nixar was looking behind and his team wasn't there to back him up anymore. So there is, as Chiso mentioned, an obvious weakness to Nixar, specifically in the mid game. So that's what I think where Kuala Lumpur Hunters should aim towards to, not exactly in the early game. As we saw the other Group A teams, they were trying to put more ganks into the bot lane of Ascension Gaming, trying to test out the chemistry between Nixar and Rich. But we do see that they know how to play defensively. They know how to play in such a way that they won't become a detriment to the team. So I think that's also one of the keys for Ascension Gaming and Kuala Lumpur Hunters to try to exploit.
That's actually a pretty interesting point right there, because not only are we looking at a scenario wherein there's a certain phase that kind of gets a bit shaky, but also I think it's what every single team that brings in an import struggles with, especially if English might not necessarily be the primary form of communication for both sides here. And we've seen a number of teams, it can be a struggle sometimes, especially at very crucial moments where you have to be on point. So we've talked a little bit about Ascension Gaming here. Let's go ahead and talk about the boys you're rooting for, Chisto, the Kuala Lumpur Hunters.
Well, of course, we did mention Caspiel earlier. He is one of their star players, but like you did also say, Arctic, it's really difficult to pinpoint who you have to watch out for on the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters, since most of them are really, really good players. But if we're gonna have to talk about weaknesses, I'd have to talk about the players around Caspiel, because what allows him to play that certain aggressive style of jungling is his laners enabling him to go for these invades. So if the rest of Kuala Lumpur Hunters laners are behind, it basically shuts down their best player.
So, with that said, would it be safe to say that their strength could technically be a weakness if the people around him can kind of gear towards getting him to that level where he pulls everybody up?
Precisely.
Yeah,
There
I
you
mean,
go.
I think we did actually see a game or two where, yes, Caspiel was getting a bunch of kills on that Nocturne.
Yeah.
He had a pretty great KDA, but as you reach this mid to late game, you start to wonder, what are the rest of Kuala Lumpur Hunters going to do, especially if, for example, a team as smart as Ascension is just going to try and focus him and shut him down. If Caspiel's gone, who are you going to rely on? Usually, we talk about Azora Vecchi, but of course, you know, sometimes things just don't always pan out the way you want, so they definitely want to also be able to rely on their other laners. I do agree, Caspiel may be a double-edged sword in the sense that if he's not getting ahead, then maybe the rest of the team falls behind, and Vecchi did admit that when we were interviewing him yesterday. He said, yes, when Caspiel gets ahead, everyone gets ahead, everyone does well, but what happens when Caspiel falls behind, that's what we'll have to see.
Agreed. And with that said, Crazy Apple.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add, we did see in the tiebreakers between Kuala Lumpur Hunters and Mega Esports for that first seed spot, it was a very, I would say, no-kill game. It was a very passive game from both teams. I believe the first blood was at like 17 minutes, and where
Yeah.
Caspiel caught out Secret in the mid lane. And yeah, in that game, it was indicative if a team would just play passively against Kuala Lumpur Hunters, not giving Caspiel any way to take advantage of his over-aggression sometimes in the counter jungle in trying to track down the enemy jungler. If Caspiel can't get an advantage through that, then it shows that Kuala Lumpur Hunters is also a very passive team, because not a lot of their other members can initiate in the early game. They don't really make a lot of risky plays.
So, we've talked about both teams right here. Let's go ahead and talk about point persons you want to look out for this particular matchup. Sure, we have general MVPs for both sides here, but I think given the strengths and weaknesses, there's going to be a particular point of power that people might want to look out for in terms of their players. Anybody you particularly want to highlight in form of matchup?
I want to look at RH on the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters. I feel like we saw his champion will not majority of these are carries, and if he decides to stick with the specific champion, it's very easy in a best of 5 to actually ban them out and force him onto something he may not be comfortable on. Let's see if his champ pool gets tested.
Okay.
Yeah, and to add to Chisto's point right there, that the matchup is, I would also like to feature that matchup, the RH and G4. And if we do see that RH gets bans out, then we might see more picks from him. There might be more sleeper picks coming from him, like probably the Aurelion Soul might also be perma-banned, because not a lot of teams want to go against that champion, because it's really tricky to have that matchup. But at the same time, if they don't put the other members of the team to have more initiation, as I was talking about earlier for Caspiel, then it's going to be really hard for Kuala Lumpur Hunters to force a mistake out of Ascension Gaming, because we did see in the group stages that Ascension Gaming is probably one of the most solid teams in knowing what is the strengths and weaknesses of their team composition and the enemy's team composition.
Ah, that is particularly true. And I guess at the end of the day, heading into this match right here, I mean, expectation-wise, there's a lot riding on Ascension Gaming here. If anything, I've been checking out some of the feedback on social media. A lot of people are looking at a potential 3-0 at most. Kuala Lumpur Hunters does take a game 3-1. But I guess at this time around, I'd like to get your feedback, guys. I honestly have an inkling. I honestly think, why should I even bother asking Amplifier and Chisto particularly, given that they have expressed their particular favorites as early as the pre-show. But, you know, just to give you guys a little bit more time to justify your answer, who do you think is just going to take game one? Just game one right now, because I guess after game one, we'll be able to, you know, if you want to jump the fence later on, Amplifier, Chisto, I'll give you the opportunity. But for game one particularly, before we head into everything with all said and done, who do you want to see, Amplifier? Take it away.
All right, I think for game, because I'm actually thinking in terms of the whole series, I think KLH definitely has the potential to take a game away from Ascension. I do think game one, Ascension is going to take that one. And then eventually, as we see the series pan out, KLH will, I really have a feeling KLH is going to bring something up that we haven't seen before. Because when I was talking to him yesterday, we were talking about things they had prepared, and he specifically mentioned to watch out for something they still have up their sleeve. So I think game one goes to Ascension, and then we watch out for what KLH does later on.
Yeah,
to
I
Crazy
do
Apple?
agree that it looks like Ascension Gaming will take game one because most of the time for game ones in the series, it's either one team brings out a sudden surprise pick, which Kuala Lumpur Hunters might do. But one of the strengths from Kuala Lumpur Hunters in the group stages is also their drafting phase, their pick and ban. And usually in a best of series, especially a best of 5, when you go to like third to fourth game, you would see a lot of patterns from the other team. And if Kuala Lumpur Hunters can take advantage of the patterns that Ascension Gaming might show in the duration of this series, then Kuala Lumpur Hunters might be able to get a game about game 2, game 3. But I don't believe that at game 1 that it would immediately be in the favor of Kuala Lumpur Hunters because in my opinion, I feel like Ascension Gaming has the higher skill ceiling in terms of pure mechanic skill.
Alrighty, Chisto. I don't know, the guys are kind of against you here, but are you gonna show some heart for your boys?
For 2-0 Ascension, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna go for Kuala Lumpur Hunters game 1. I disagree with Crazy Apple. I feel like they're gonna bring out the weird stuff, the up the sleeve type of picks early and try and throw off Ascension.
Okay, so there you have it. Looks like we have a little bit more of a favor towards Ascension Gaming right here. Both Amplifier and Crazy Apple agreeing that Ascension Gaming gonna just take game 1 towards the start of this best of 5. Meanwhile, Chiso's still gonna support his boys through thick and thin. Kuala Lumpur Hunters for him, but of course, to all our audience out there and as well as to our viewers watching from our live streams online, let us know. Be sure to participate in discussion as to who you guys think will be taking this series or just even this game 1 because we kind of want to make it a build-up here. So if you're rooting for Ascension Gaming, the first seed of Thailand, probably the biggest favorite to win Globe Conquerors Manila, be sure to use the hashtag ASCWin. And for the sole representative remaining from Malaysia, we had 2 before, just 1 remaining now. Be sure to use hashtag KLH for the Kuala Lumpur Hunters. So a little bit later on, we'll be passing it to our casters. But any final thoughts, gentlemen, on what you want our audience as well as our live viewers to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, I actually want to bring up some of the things that the two teams had said yesterday because they did get interviewed yesterday, and Ascension actually see this matchup being a straight up 3-0. They said personally they think they can completely win this one and go straight to Worlds. G4 had mentioned specifically that he's 99% sure they're going straight to Worlds for this one. As for KLH, we had asked Becky what he thought about the matchup, and he was saying it's definitely going to be difficult. He admits that Ascension are definitely the favorite team here. He thinks it's a 50-50 chance they win against Ascension today, but if they do win against Ascension, he's 100% confident they're going to Worlds after.
Anything you gentlemen are looking forward to particularly that you feel the audience should look out for as well?
I'm looking forward to 5 games.
I
want 5 games.
You know what? It actually hasn't been something that has been brought up. Like, people are assuming, oh, it's gonna go 3, oh, it's gonna go 3-1 for either side here, but the possibility of 5 games, do you think it's feasible, Crazy Apple?
I do think that it's feasible, even though in my head I'm banking on a 3-1. I'm not gonna say right now who I think would get that 3-1, but I do think that there is a high possibility we get a 3-2 because both of these teams don't seem to have a lot of, in terms of tilt, they don't really tilt that hard. So even though they get, essentially the other team against them gets the lead, they don't really make a lot of bad plays. The only bad play that we did mention Ascension Gaming has is that sometimes Nixar does get caught out. And I think for Kuala Lumpur Hunters, it's more of sometimes the over-aggression coming from Caspiel that sometimes he just sacrifices his life for either a 1-for-1 or even a detriment to his team. So we'll see if that would cost Kuala Lumpur Hunter more games than they could win against Ascension Gaming.
Yeah, I actually like that you brought that up about the over-aggression because we look at the group stages of KLH, right? And we remember that they had lost their last 2 games before they were here today.
Yeah.
They had lost against, I believe that was Archangel,
Yes.
and then they lost to Mega, which we were expecting them to win, but apparently it was Mega who made it to first seed. So I think there's definitely KLH. We're wondering how confident are they coming into this series after losing 2 games in a row before getting here. We had seen in that tiebreaker match, or rather the match against Archangel, when they were supposed to secure first seed, where there was definitely a lot of over-aggression, especially towards the late game. We saw things like Shiro TPing way too far from the team, Azura Vecchi TPing into base to try and finish off the game by himself. Just these calls where we're wondering, are they being over-aggressive? Is this going to be a trend or a weakness that's definitely already ingrained in them as a team? Or, I mean, I remember Vecchi was saying how Superior, he kind of acts as the guy who grounds the team. It's Azura, Vecchi, and Caspiel who are usually like, go, 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 go. But Superior's like, no, 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 we have to, back out. Let's just relax and slow down the game. So I'm definitely interested to see throughout this series if KLH will show that weakness or if they've adopted and learned from the last 2 games where they lost, to try and beat ASC today.
Out of curiosity, because I think we've been getting a lot of information on why Ascension Gaming would be kind of be the no-brainer to not just win this series, but just take the entire playoffs, go Conquerors Manila. But I think it's important to kind of look at opinion that's away from Ascension Gaming. Chisto, you've been rooting for the Kuala Lumpur Hunters. What factor do you think that KLH has that could kind of defy the odds, take a few games, if not the series, from Ascension Gaming?
One big difference I see according to the rosters is Ascension had to switch up theirs. They had to switch Lloyd to the jungle and add Nixar on the AD carry position. Whereas Kuala Lumpur Hunters, they've been consistently the same roster for quite a long time now, and I think that's a massive factor when it comes to a best of 5.
Ah, that's actually kind of true. So we'll just have to find out in a teeny tiny bit as to who will be taking the series. Of course, first blood in a way, first game that we're looking out for here, KLH or ASC. So we'll be heading into the game in a teeny tiny bit. Looks like our players are still setting up right now. But Crazy Apple, you had something that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I just thought about another matchup that we could probably look out for in this series, essentially because Rocky in the top lane has been a really good top laner, has been the best top laner in his group. And I do believe that Shiro in Group B is also arguably the best top laner in his group. And I think Rocky didn't have as much of a challenge in Group A, seeing as his opponents in the top lane. So we'll see if Shiro can dictate the pace of the game, because if Shiro and Rocky do face off both carry champions in the top lane, essentially I think they both play Camille, and I'm very excited to see that matchup, probably a Camille Renekton, because Rocky did play a really, really good Renekton against Mineski. And if we do see a carry matchup between these 2 top laners, that can be one point of contention where Caspiel can take advantage of.
You know what? I'm glad that you brought that up. Amplifier, you wanted to follow.
Oh yeah, I was just going to add, because I like that you brought up the top lane there, because we look at the playstyles, right? And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how these teams adopt going into this best of 5 series. There's so many games and there's so many different ways that you can choose to attack points of weakness throughout those. We were talking, I remember Nixar was saying yesterday during the interview that he thinks KLH definitely tend to play towards the bot side. And he was talking about how if KLH continue to play the bot side in this best of 5 series, he believes that they can't beat Ascension with that playstyle. So I'm definitely interested to see, will KLH continue to play towards that bot side? Do you really want to get Azura, Vecchi, and Caspiel going? Or are you going to try and cover up, trying to shut down the strength of ASC, who are trying to play the top side? They're trying to get Rocky going, they're trying to get him ahead. Will we see KLH try to kind of shut that down and prevent Rocky, from get going and pop off in that game?
You know what? One thing that I'd like to kind of backtrack back on is going back to the champion pool of both sides here, because I think in some of the games that we had during the group stage, there's a particular champion that during a game, both sides would kind of want to tug a war against. Let's say this top laner can use Camille efficiently, this top laner could as well. Once they clash against each other, they'd either deny the pick or would heavily prioritize it as their first pick right away. Are there any particular champions that you think Ascension Gaming and Kuala Lumpur Hunters will kind of play tug-of-war against?
Are these specific top lane champions or any champions in general?
I think in general, yeah.
Well, of course, Rakan, 100% pick and ban so far. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Rise as well.
Yeah.
Very safe blind pick in the mid lane. So those are 2 champions I feel are going to be highly contested when it comes to the pick and ban phase.
How about,
Yeah, I also do think for Lloyd, he did just recently switch to the jungle position, and I think the only really good performance that he had was on that Trundle. He did essentially dictate the pace of the game early on with that Trundle pick. He kept going into the enemy jungle, trying to track down his counterpart, but on other jungle picks, he didn't seem to have as much impact in the game, other than I would believe he played that Lee Sin. And that Lee Sin was, it was good, but it wasn't as amazing as his Trundle pick.
Okay, so since there's not really as much a number as far as champions, that would kind of tug a war between both sides here. I think another factor that we should look out for here is are most of these players flexible in what they're able to field, or has a particular role stuck to being much more carry-oriented, being much more utility-oriented to build up towards the rest of their members that can carry? So is there anybody in particular that you feel has a distinct play style that doesn't really offer as much flexibility in comparison to others?
Well, we did mention RH, mid laner for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. His pool has majority consisted of the Galio, the Malzahar, the Lulu, mostly utility champions, not necessarily carries. And against G4, the guy who has a massive champion, he has an ocean of champions he can bring out in the mid lane. I think that's going to be one thing to watch out for. If G4 is able to shut down these utility-based champions, it's going to be very difficult for Kuala Lumpur Hunters to set up most of the plays they want to make in game.
True.
Yeah, and I do believe in terms of what champions that each player would tend to go to, it's Caspiel. He always goes for these carry picks. He notably goes for that Nocturne, goes for that Kindred, which deals a lot of damage. He did have that one game on the Rek'Sai, which is one of those legacy picks that it's also pretty unorthodox coming into this tournament. We wouldn't really think that a Rek'Sai would be in the mix, but he did use it to great effect, dictating the early game of that game, and he was really good on the Rek'Sai. He did deal a lot of damage. He went the Electrocute Keystone Mastery on that game. And if we do see other champion picks from Caspiel that are more carry-oriented or have a lot of early game potential, first thing comes to mind is that Lee Sin. Lee Sin did get a recent buff to his Q that would allow him to deal more damage even to squishy targets. So if Caspiel, in the early phases of the game, gets on that Lee Sin and just keeps on putting the pressure on Lloyd, there's a high chance that Lloyd can just be essentially beaten down and he can't answer back because he might not have as much experience in that jungle position.
Yeah, I feel like in top lane, it's also important to look at what Rocky's going to be playing as well. We know that he's definitely one of the star players. If you look at the group stage champions that he's been picking throughout, you have champions like Renekton, Ryze, Camille, and Gnar, and he pretty much won on all of those. Since they went undefeated, he just performed, stellarly on all of them. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see throughout the pick and ban what KLH allowed to slip through the ban phase, and if they have any counter picks, because I really think this top lane here, we're looking at Rocky and Shiro, and we're thinking Rocky is probably the one who's more talented in that matchup. He's definitely, especially since Ascension tend to play to the top side, they're definitely going to want to get Rocky ahead of Shiro. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how KLH are going to adjust in that draft. Are they going to allow, Rocky to continue to get those carry top laners, or does, Shiro have something up his sleeve? Maybe they give him the last pick, and then maybe he gets a counter pick onto one of the comfortable champions of Rocky. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing.
One thing that we've been talking about earlier, in terms of potential weaknesses that a team can exploit, we've been very specific when it came to Ascension Gaming by singling out Mixer in terms of communication, in terms of how there have been a number of instances wherein he'd either fall behind in comparison to his teammates or find himself in an awkward position on the map where he gets picked off. On the flip side, for Kuala Lumpur Hunters, we kind of express that weakness as more of a general effort gearing towards Caspiel. But is there a single person from the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters that, aside from Caspiel, who does fall behind, we can single out as the person that hasn't had the best moments during group stage, or you can kind of nitpick as to kind of either getting picked off or hasn't been doing the most efficient at his role in comparison to the competition?
Well, right off my head, I feel like it's superior on the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters. He was getting picked off quite a lot of times, but he has played mostly Tahm Kench, which usually you put yourself in a very dangerous spot, and it's very easy for teams to focus him down, especially if you don't have the QSS yet. So I feel like if there's Nixar on Ascension Gaming, it's going to be superior on the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters.
True.
Yeah. I feel like potentially there's also the chance that you want to look at RH as well, because when you look at the champion pool, like we said, he doesn't really play the usual meta mid laners that we usually see. He's usually getting these kind of like utility mid laners that kind of just want to accelerate the other lanes. Yeah. But there's also a chance that, as we see throughout the game, throughout the pick and ban phase, what if Ascension don't allow him, to play those champions and force him into a pick that he's not comfortable with? That could be something potentially that Ascension could exploit, especially since G4, is looked at as that star player. He could just pop off and really just try and bully out RH in that mid lane.
So, last
and
thought?
I do remember in group stages when I was casting the games of Ascension, they would usually exploit small mistakes coming from the other teams and would just try and get a lot of objectives out of that. So if Ascension Gaming could see more of the more of the mistakes from Kuala Lumpur Hunters, then that would be one of those things that Kuala Lumpur Hunters may fall prey to.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So there you have it. We've heard from our analysts right here. I guess it really comes down to, regardless of the predictions, once again, Amplifier and Crazy Apple going with Ascension Gaming to take game one. And Chisto, the sole supporter of Kuala Lumpur Hunters, on the desk to take game one. But it really comes down to the teams right here to make the most of their own destiny. We'll let our casters break down what exactly is going to happen in a teeny tiny bit. Once again, thank you very much, Amplifier, Crazy Apple, and Gisto. I'm Arctic. This has been our insights from the analyst desk. Rico and Asteroid will be taking it away in a teeny tiny bit. But for the meantime, ladies and gents, stay tuned to Globe Conquerors Manila live right here at Mo Arena.
Wow, straight from the get-go, we just get into the draft. So my name is Asarai, and of course here with me now is Riku, and we'll be your casters for game number one in the specified series for our semifinals, Ascension Gaming versus Kuala Lumpur Hunters. So without further ado, you know what to do.
Yes, Suri, I'm so excited. Just as the desk has mentioned, 6-0 for Ascension Gaming. So in terms of momentum, they do have that. They are also last champions for the GPL Spring Split 2018. And they have already faced Kuala Lumpur Hunters. So let's check out what their priorities are. I'm not very surprised to see that Malzahar ban against Kuala Lumpur Hunters, just because it has been very effective. And especially it's one of RH Comfort, you know, sort of one of the very strong picks for him in the mid lane.
Yeah, definitely. So they were also talking in the analyst desk about how there's like Kuala Lumpur Hunters is the team that actually has the biggest chance to be able to stand up against Ascension, and it has been kind of like they showed, like, we didn't expect that to happen, but they showed up during the group stage.
Exactly, and we have seen so many adjustments when day 3, day 4 came. There were a lot of surprise picks coming from Kuala Lumpur Hunters, just like the Leona support, just as the Aurelian Soul as well. So I'm assuming in this best of 5 series, there will be a couple of certain adjustments, learning process. There's so much room to just dish out these secret strategies against Ascension, because again, they are the team to beat in this Globe Conquerors Manila tournament.
Yeah, so speaking of secrets, we actually won't be seeing any, I feel like this game number one, we won't be seeing too many crazy picks. And for the bans, it's actually pretty standard all throughout. Zoe and Rise, you don't really want those kind of, you know, snowballing as the game progresses. Varus is one of the picks that Nixstar is known to have used consistently during the group stage as well.
Exactly. So now let's see what Ascension Gaming's priority is going to be. Is it going to be at the top lane, or since Nocturne is open, which is one of Caspiel's carry picks as well in the jungle, aside from the Kindred, and immediately so that they could shut down one of Rocky's prominent picks during the group stages.
But it's actually not yet a lock-in pick. They are still hovering over. Nope. This is the tournament where we won't be seeing the 8.15 Akali. So if you guys are like looking forward to it, sad life, it's not really going to happen. But for the meantime, there you go. One of the, if not the most picked champion in this particular tournament, the Rakan.
Exactly. One of the very most contested supports as well. Usually we don't see a Rakan because it's always being banned, but looks like Ascension Gaming is that comfy enough to let it through. But in the end, we'll see what their second pick is going to be. Either they pick something in the jungle right now, which is the Kindred. Caspiel's pick on the Kindred has been a very effective champion for him because it allows him to keep roaming and invading throughout the map, especially at the enemy jungle. And as well as this is a very key pick when they won at Hyperplay. That was just recently conducted at Singapore as well.
Yeah, great actually to point that out. But now we're seeing Ascension also pick up the Tom Kencher. So they're just, you know, getting these safe picks for the meantime, and it actually just allows, you know, whatever Nixstar picks to be more of a safe pick, which is what I believe Ascension Gaming kind of does with their bottom lane, wherein, you know, they have Nixstar and Rich just kind of have this bottom lane that isn't going to be as explosive you think they would be, but at least they won't fall off.
Exactly. But then again, it seems to me that they've decided to get a Pyke and a Tom Kench. So first game for today, we have certain surprises here. So we'll see how that's gonna pan out. I'm not quite sure if like KLH, you can see the faces of KLH. It's like, is this right? I'm not sure. But then it's interesting because I was assuming that it might be like an AD carry that Ascension would have locked in if you pair it with a Tom Kench. But so far, I am very amazed by the picks here from our first game between KLH and the Ascension Gaming.
I think the word that you're looking for is flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted. You read my mind, Asar. You read my mind.
Actually, just based on my experience, this could actually be a top lane Tom Kench.
Yes.
It actually has a lot of good counters if you're gonna go for maybe a tank top laner, or even if like maybe you go for an Aatrox. I mean, Aatrox hasn't really seen a good amount of successful play during this tournament, but I feel like it's gonna be a good matchup overall, and you have at least that that global presence as well with the ultimate from the top.
Exactly. And as well as it seems to me that Ascension Gaming is just consuming a lot of their flexible players just so that they will get more picks away from Kuala Lumpur Hunters. So getting that Pyke, getting that Tom Kench is pretty interesting. But then again, we're seeing a lot of first times here. Again, Heimerdinger did not appear at all during the group stages of our Globe Conquerors Manila. So this is certainly another interesting turn, but we'll have to see how this pans out. Kaisa being banned on the side of Ascension Gaming, as well as Aurelia and Camille. Not surprised right there, but it just means that there's a lot of flexibility going on. Like Camille could be assumed, banning that could be assumed either top side of the map. We'll have to see. It's just very, very interesting.
It's very interesting and kind of tries to catch you off, but I feel like this might be like, I'm pretty sure we did have like that time when you and Amplify were interviewing the teams where Kuala Lumpur Hunters was saying that they have some strategies that they might actually employ. I was expecting that we might see that later as this game progresses, but it seems like it's going to be starting right from the get-go. I'm pretty sure this Heimerdinger is going to go for that ADC role, because if I think about it, it's actually not so bad matchup against the Pyke.
Yeah. Could be still anything either way, because second phase of Ascension Gaming, they still banned out the Kaisa, they still banned out the Saya. So they're still assuming that Heimerdinger, yes, could be in the mid lane. But here, Nixar locking in that Misfortune, one of the most key picks as well during the group stages. He performed phenomenally on this MF, so we'll have to see what their mid lane is going to be. And it seems that they're hovering over to the Azir, Asarai.
So there's a lot of mobility here for Ascension Gaming, not only for initiating ganks, but for actually controlling the team fight as well. And something that it just looks to be like is there's a lot of setup here to actually maximize the ultimate for the Misfortune. Like you have yourself that, the incredible drift coming out from the Azir. There's also the ultimate of the Nocturne that'll block out the vision of the opponents. And this is just like all good setups for Nexar to maybe, kind of contribute more to the team fight with the Misfortune. And Kuala Lumpur Hunters. There you go. It's going to be the Heimer ADC, or Heimer bottom lane.
Hyper bottom lane indeed. So I guess Ascension Gaming was just very wary, assuming that maybe it's a surprise mid lane Heimerdinger, trying to ban out the ADCs. But I'm liking this pick from Shiro as well. So we'll have to see how this pans out for the both of them. Because again, a very heavy magic lane for bot side and as well as the mid lane as well. And Caspiel has a lot of CCs to work with just to get him rolling throughout the early phases of the game. Split push as well is also covered coming from Shiro's side just in case they get a little wonky start on the early phases of the game. For Ascension Gaming, there's that Pyke pick as well, because most of the time during the early phases for Ascension Gaming, it's pretty chill at bot. But with that Pyke pick, I'm assuming they would get that Pyke, roam to mid, and get G4 rolling. Or if they see an opportunity with their jungler Lloyd, they could immediately get themselves up as well during the early phase of the game at the bot side of the map.
Yeah, it's like a duo death squad that they'll just use to keep, the pressure up. And this is what I believe the analyst desk was also talking about. Like, one of the spearheads for Kuala Lumpur Hunters is actually Caspiel on that jungle role. Like, Caspiel is more of that guy who just wants to be, the one to start everything for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. He goes for those carry type of jungles, and Kindred is one, like you said, used in hyper play quite a bit. But something that catches, I feel like, will catch them off guard is this top lane Tahm Kench. Like I said, it might not be a good matchup against the Gnar in range form, but against the huge melee form, the Mega Gnar, I think it's gonna be a good one, because if you're gonna stack up the Tahm Kench, then you can actually disable him, swallow him whole, and just keep him out of the fight.
Exactly. A lot of safety for Ascension Gaming side, just in case that they might be caught off guard by the death squad of Kuala Lumpur Hunters. But again, looking back, taking a step back from the group stages of GCM, it's a surprise to me that they put Rocky in a very utility champion this time around, because most of the time he's so very effective carrying carry champions. At the top of my head, Renekton, Camille. But at this time around, it's just very interesting that they opted for this starting composition.
All right, so I believe we are ready to get into the Summoners Rift for game number 1. So let's just straight roll it in. And quick announcement, guys, this tournament is under the regulation and supervision of the Games and Amusement Board.
There we go. I'm so...
It's very cold here in Mall of Asia Arena, but I feel like these picks from both of these teams are total fire. So, let's have a quick rundown of our players. And again, this is game number 1 here for Ascension Gaming. In the top lane, we have Rocky on the Tahm Kench jungle. It's going to be Lloyd on the Nocturne. In the mid, well, we'll be having G4 on his Azir, ADC Nixar with the Misfortune, and Rich for the Pike.
Yes, sir. KLH here on the Nard, Jungle Caspiel on that Kindred, RH on that Aurelion Sol, Azora Vecchi on the Heimerdinger, and support Superior on the Rakan.
So, interactions. What do you think was going to happen here? I mean, Pike's going to try to at least dive in and get some nasty hooks against his opponent, but as I've seen in the past, we've kind of experienced Heimerdingers and as a bottom lane, right? And he excels at kind of being able to zone effectively opponents. So with picks such as, again, Pike and maybe even the Nocturne who wants to get into the middle of the fight, it could actually be more of a task for them now that it's gonna be, a Heimerdinger in that particular role.
Exactly. But on the other side of the spectrum, we have Ascension Gaming with a lot to roll with, especially if the Nocturne goes Paranoia. You do have the Abyssal Voyage to take someone with you and do a 3-man sort of aggressive gank and just not, wow, early game aggression from KLH here. He has the ability to do so.
Yeah. This is something that you gotta take note, guys. We're gonna be pronouncing KLH's Aurelion Sol as RH.
RH.
He baits us to call him R-Hedge, but yeah, it's not gonna happen. Anyways, another thing that I kind of want to point out here in this particular matchup, I like it because Aurelion Sol, with his flaming orbs of death, you're going to be able to at least bypass the Sand Soldiers here of Azir, and when he uses his ultimate with the wall, you can actually just bypass all of that with all of your damage. Nothing is gonna get blocked, which is, I think, a good answer as well from Kuala Lumpur Hunters during the drafting stage.
Yes, but you have to take note that there's a lot of explosive things going on the composition of Ascension Gaming. We've seen the Azir and Misfortune combo already, Emperor's Divide, and then you just ult with a Misfortune. As long as you get a 3-man, everyone from the opposite side of the team is super squishy, and that's the reason why Caspiel's Lamb's Respite is so detrimental in turning around fights in case that Ascension Gaming pulls the trigger.
Look at his timing though. Shiro, they're just gonna wait for Shiro's Rage Bar to actually go off, and then they're gonna go for the gank. Level 3 for Lloyd with a red buff, so here they start it up. He doesn't have the bounce. Level 2, so this guy's very squishy. Can they actually connect onto it? He flashes over, very low in HP, one more shot, and First Blood gets taken by Ascension Gaming.
Wow, sneaky by Ascension. There was a ward there at the brush at the riverside, but because of the sneaky pathing coming from Lloyd, he pretty much knows where to enter, and that is a good take for that first blood for Ascension.
Efficiency with the ganks. You kind of expect him to go for the blue buff right after the red in a couple of camps, but you know what he says? Once I get that level 3, I want to get that insta-kill, and here he goes. Speaking of kills, though, KLH's Caspiel is hovering over the bottom lane. As you can really see that his ADC or duo bot here is kind of forcing it. They might go for a offensive, maybe tower dive, but I don't think it's kind of good against a Pyke who can just, punish you straight from the get-go.
Indeed. Very scary CC from Rich there on that Pyke. Don't want to risk it. It's not like a Morgana Talia that happened at Mega, their match against Mega last time at group stages. But going back to Kuala Lumpur Hunter's side, good rotation still, knowing the fact that the Nocturne was there earlier at the top side, might as well try to take away at least a consolation prize from that first blood. So we'll have to see how they're gonna adjust to this, because Infernal Drake is the first dragon. We've seen Ocean Drakes, Air Drakes being taken at the 15-minute mark, but here comes an engage.
Good connections with the stun, very low in HP, has to tumble or swim away, and Rich, well, didn't have to use his flash or ignite, but did have to at least get that healing from Nixar. So good initiations there from Azoroveki and Superior. There is the rotation here from Caspiel as he is looking onto G4. Can Arhedge connect a stun here as he jumps in for the fight? But Lloyd is here on the sidelines. Very careful not to get hit by this one as... Oh, he's gonna go for it. I mean, he doesn't have the ultimate just yet. There's the no stun connections, and he is really diving into this one, but Lloyd is kind of a little bit cautious knowing that Caspiel is not far behind.
Indeed, look at that. Both control wards are placed at opposite sides of the river brush. So obviously, they have seen or anticipated that maybe they will wait for the correct time to actually get an aggressive play. But as you can see, top side already rotation for that Kindred. But at the moment, G4 is sitting fine and dandy as he has a lot of range to work with his soldiers. Now, Chunk 2, half HP already, but no summoner spells have been burned from earlier, except for that heal coming from Nixar from bot lane.
Yeah. So one thing that I kind of noticed here from Kuala Lumpur Hunters, back when they had that tiebreaker match against Mega, is that they are a team that can also play the safe game. Like, they're just going to be... They're going to look for the ganks, but they won't overcommit to it, because I believe that there was also Amplifier who said that there is, I believe, Superior joining the team who said he's like the voice of reason here for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. If they try to go aggressive, he'll say, don't go for it, guys. We're just going to have to try to do it again the next time. Don't try to make the hero plays, because this is a game that we're trying to win, not try to be, stylistic about it.
Exactly, and it's a very, very good balance in terms of dynamics for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. But looking at their composition, I'm guessing it's going to be extra explosive for Ascension Gaming once they all reach their level 6, especially with Lloyd and Rocky on that Abyssal Voyage. I believe they'll make a lot of proactive plays around the map just because they can, and just because a lot on the opposite side of KLH are very squishy. They could easily take advantage of that early burst damage and just surprise everybody else. Rich spots Caspiel here, just placing a ward at the red side.
He'll pop the Observer there, but as you can see, even RH is actually going to be hovering over this one. They do spot out, I believe that was just Caspiel and the Misfortune in the timing to at least be able to steal this red buff. Really it's gonna deter somewhat the ganking prowess of Lloyd, as he won't be able to use that properly. Activates the ultimate here, and he actually goes in for the dive. TP will be used by Rocky, but then immediately just cancel it as they disengage. And like I said, voice of reason. Don't want to go overcommit onto this one, as they don't have insane damage just yet to, to follow up their initiations.
Yes, indeed. Good disengage there, but we'll see a pause from our first game for today. But again, good disengage. Level 5, the jungler of Kuala Lumpur Hunters wasn't level 6 just yet, but Nocturne managed to reach his level 6 rather. So of course they don't want to commit to that, as they probably most likely will lose that sort of matchup.
Yeah, what's kind of perfect here is that Kuala Lumpur Hunters didn't really use a lot to kind of sort of start that skirmish, and they forced Nocturne to use his ultimate and for Rocky to also use his TP. So the only thing for mobility right now for a couple of minutes for Ascension is probably going to be the Abyssal Voyage and maybe, the Chicken Drift of Azir. So that's actually something that, Kuala Lumpur Hunters can actually use immediately from the get-go, since I believe it's going to be the Nar who would have his TP up to, start off something or follow up what Kuala Lumpur Hunters wants to do.
Exactly. But one of the key things for Kuala Lumpur Hunters most of the time when they win their matches is their strong early game. And it's one of those things whereas if Caspiel cannot find the correct catch for during the early phases of the game or the early invades and find a pick, then it's going to be a very difficult transition for the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters. And so far, so good for Ascension Gaming. They're very slow and steady. They're very dominant in terms of macro play, and in terms of damage, they're not lacking as well. Contesting objectives might be very tricky for Kuala Lumpur Hunters just because there's a lot of AoE damage coming from the side of Ascension Gaming and a lot of burst. On the other side though, if there's a lot of burst, you have the Lamb's Respite coming from the jungler Caspiel, Yesuri on that Kindred. So you know, it's all about that timing, playing around with the cooldowns as well, and trying to bait out cooldowns when they try to take objectives. Because we've seen a lot of very scary objective takes around Baron and around Dragon that they've turned things around just because they're all clumped up in that single area. Just very open to that painful AoE.
Yeah, something that I kind of want to point out here was with something you said. They're going to be using Caspiel's Lamb's Respite. But one of the things that Ascension actually, picked in the drafting to counter this out is the Azir. So I feel like there's gonna be a bit less of reliance to the Lamb's Respite to actually keep them alive in the team fights because, well, Azir can just push you out. And if you try to, keep forcing fights with knowing that, Caspiel is there, he's going to be using his ultimate to try to prolong, our lives. It's not really going to happen because, again, they're going to be pushed out. They're going to be they're going to be low in HP, and they're going to be easy pickings for, this Misfortune who can deal damage from such a far range, and even, the Nocturne again who can just dive in and just slash you to smithereens.
Exactly. That's actually a good point. There's a lot of displacement. There's a displacement skill rather on the side of Ascension Gaming. But what I'm very curious about what the mid-game is going to look like because so far it's been very steady. No aggressive play so far except for that one engage at the riverside near the Raptor camp of Ascension Gaming. So I'm looking forward to more proactive plays, especially using the Abyssal Voyage. And it looks like we're back in the game.
I feel like with that, Kuala Lumpur Hunters is starting to set up a possible Dragon take here. I know that they haven't gotten any kills yet, but I think it's gonna be leading up to that. But we'll just have to see how it pans out. RH is starting a little bit of harassment against G4, but G4 has been pretty good in kind of using his Sand Soldiers to bring back the damage onto his opponent. And you can see right here that he is putting him very freaking low. And RH is just obliging him a little bit. Actually is kind of looking to go for some resistances to the magic damage side. A little bit afraid of that Azir pokes.
Exactamundo. And when you mentioned burst, it kind of reminded me of the fact that the build path is actually perfect. If a Nocturne jumps into one of the very squishy targets, for example, maybe RH or maybe Ozora Veki, it's just like an easy click on that stopwatch, I guess, later on on their build. Yeah. So it might be, it's that extra defense and denial. And there's a lot of sustained damage coming from the side of KLH. So I'm just really looking forward. Here comes a TP.
It's just gonna be, the Heimerdinger, the Mad Tinkerer, the Scientist. 4 members are here. It's gonna be a 4v4. It could be the start up. There's the hook in to the Rakan, but as you can see, RH has to back away. Misfortune activates her ultimate, and this forces Rakan to actually back away. Caspiel goes in with a dive. 2v1 situation, activates the Lamb's Respite, but G4 is not there to push him out. So he's gonna be flashing over the wall, but still gets blasted by Nixar. And 4 members of Ascension still here in front of the Dragon. And ladies and gentlemen, this is an Infernal, so it's really gonna boost up their damage as this game progresses. But that was a little bit questionable, I would say, from KLH.
Huge reward there from Ascension Gaming. Aside from getting a kill on Caspiel, one of the key members of KLH, it's not over!
He flashes in, wants to go for the kill. 2v2, activates the ultimate from the Rakan, but doesn't follow up at all. More of like a disengage rather than a counter engage right there. Ozora Veki, I did say that he is good at zoning, but at the same time, he is a pretty static target once you get hit by the initiations from our Pike here.
Indeed, very good hook. Actually managed to force Superior to back away and respect all that damage. But moving back to what I just mentioned earlier in terms of composition, when you are going to be contesting objectives, doing the Dragon Dance, doing the Baron Dance, it's so tricky because you're just very open to the AoE. Yes, KLH has has a lot of AoE on their side as well, but the range coming from Ascension Gaming, they have the means to poke in safety first before going all in. But I guess, let's see.
Speaking of going in, this is gonna be the ultimate once again. He gets pushed back by our Aurelion Sol here, but it's really not gonna matter. The Mega Nard does not get any stuns at all, and Shiro is desperately trying to just force them away from his own carry. And from what looks like to have been a little bit of a good startup here for a little bit of the offensive side for KLH, this actually opens up maybe a free Rift Herald, but you know, Ascension, they stave off their hand. Superior looking in onto Nixar, initiates the fight, and this is gonna be a 2 versus 1. Although Nixar does have a flash here, no ultimates yet for Superior to use to initiate, and he is actually getting hit so freaking hard. There is the Misfortune ultimate, goes in, scatters the damage, and he is actually doing this 2v1.
Yes, red buff has expired, I guess. If Becky was a little bit more nearer when the engage sort of happened, then I guess Superior wouldn't be chunked down into almost more than half HP there. But look at this. Ascension Gaming is reading KLH like a book, reading Caspiel in particular like a book, knowing the fact that they're very heavy on rotations. Let's get Dragon, Infernal Dragon failed. Let's get Rift Herald. That's another best thing that's available on the map.
Goes in with the flash, pops them up. There's the lineup. Look at the rockets coming out from Azora Becky, and this guy is going to start off the first kill for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. There was the TP, I believe, in the bottom lane, but Rocky just disengages from that one. Rich is right here as well, still just looking over, and this could be a straight push to get that bottom tier 1, get that first blood on the tower. But are we going to see, are they going to really force this? Aurelion Sol, or rather Nocturne is here. Ultimate not yet available for a couple more seconds, and they just back away.
Looks like they have the timing for that red buff spawn. They do have a ward. They've spotted Nocturne, but we'll see if it's gonna work.
Oh, is that really gonna be the best possible scenario here as the Lancer's Point once again activated and Caspel not pushed out from this one. Nocturne activates the ultimate there. G4 goes in, 3-man ultimate, and there you go. Katarina 2.0 with the pike, just X marks spot damage is gonna be real. And once again, Kuala Lumpur Hunters trespassing on the territory of Ascension, not respecting that Azir can just do that in the blink of an eye.
It seems that Ascension Gaming is ready for everything that KLH is planning to do in terms of getting back into this game, and it's sort of failing. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C is not working out so well for KLH. Lamb's Respite being used there, but ultimate available still for that Nocturne. Good pike, and as well as G4 on that engage, double kill as well. So there's a lot of gold rolling on Ascension Gaming side, and it's just so difficult at this point because we've seen games from KLH when the early game doesn't work out, they seem to falter and not get back into the game.
Yeah, something that's adding also to this difficulty is I feel like Nocturne's ultimate, like aside from just the initiation for that, the blind that it puts onto your opponents, the stress that you, or the lack of information rather, just really kind of hinders Kuala Lumpur Hunters to get some really good invades. As you can see, they tried to do this once. They failed. Nobody, gets taken out, that's fine. But the second time that they try to do it, it happens, and G4 was already there for the punish because now he's looking good. Gnasher's Tooth gets his, is already level 10, and ultimate is always gonna almost be, up for use on those certain scenarios, and he is, capitalizing heavily on that.
Exactly. They are in a comfy spot at this point. 3K gold lead, but KLH, it's one of those things whereas bot lane is so pressured right now. I know that Becky is just wanting to chill at the bot side and probably get picks here and there, but none of the picks actually worked. RH, chunked to half HP, forced to respect the damage from G4 with that Gnasher's Tooth. But again, there's a lot of lanes to take care of for Caspiel, but mission accomplished here for the Kindred. Managed to get that RH, not RH. RH.
Rift Herald.
Rift Herald.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit confusing, but it's all good in the hood. There's a lot of wards coming out from G4 here as he's really trying to get that information on where Caspel is. And this just goes back to what you said, that again, Kuala Lumpur Hunters really like the rotations, so all Ascension has to do is to try to get as much information as possible on where those rotations will happen, and immediately they try to look for the strike. Lloyd spots out the Caspiel with his top side, immediately goes for the bottom, and they spot out one control ward here, plus even the blue buff, which will definitely hinder a little bit of the power, I would say, that the Aurelion Sol will give. G4 is going to be just going over the wall here. He's not going to be in a pretty tight situation. That's just, the mobility of this Azir. But like you said, it just shows the counter rotations that that Ascension has.
Yes, Ascension Gaming seems to have everything covered. One of the things that we see in terms of tendency for Caspiel, especially on the Kindred, if everything else fails, if I can't land a good lane gank, then I'll probably spot you out in your own jungle and get a pick. We've seen this numerous times against different teams, but it seems that it's not working at all for Ascension Gaming. So the question is, what is left for KLH, knowing the fact that it might be a little bit difficult once that mid game comes, once the laning phase is over, because they're just gonna Ascension Gaming seems to be a very aggressive team when it comes to when they know that they're in the lead, they'll just keep pushing through and not allow Caspiel to do any movements in the map.
Yeah, and what's kind of worrisome here is that maybe aside from just the Gnar, there's really no real tank for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. So each and every single one of them, even the Rakan to a certain extent, is on the squishier end here. So any target that Ascension actually looks to, start off a fight with is easy pickings for themselves. And on the other end, Ascension here, even though they are kind of on the squishy end themselves, they have a lot more, like you said, tools of the trade to use to kind of control the team fight, reset if ever necessary, and just overall be safe.
Exactly. But because of the way things turned out for KLH during the early game, it seems that their plan of having to have Rakan Superior assist with Caspiel, or RH here with Caspiel, seems to have not worked out in their favor. So it all boils down to try and minimize, create this sort of equalization of gold, just so that when the fight comes, when an objective comes in the map, example, Mountain Drake, definitely something that they want to contest, and definitely something Ascension Gaming wants to take. So vision control is so important, but Lloyd is already starting the Mountain Drake. Let's see how they respond, because they timed it so well. They saw KLH went home, and it's a perfect timing.
And they're going to be trading that for a possible kill onto Rocky, but he does have the Grey Health to absorb quite a bit of damage here, and Caspiel can actually go down, forced to use his Lance Respite. But now, this is a race to time. Who will get the first turret here, or tower rather, top lane or bottom lane? They activate the Rift Herald onto the bot, so that should immediately pop, but it seems like it's going to be, KLH to get themselves the first one, but they do lose, again, bottom tier 1 and a Mountain Drake for that one. So, I mean, is that really worth it? Feel like it is. They have been kind of on the difficult side of where they should actually go. There you go, activates the ultimate, and immediately Caspiel goes down. They saw that his last respite was not activated anymore, but now RH, look at what he's doing. He is just walking up to them with the fire orbs, and he is toasting them down. But now he has no chance to actually reset the fight because he has no stopwatch. He has only the Roa to get that for 8 in terms of HP, and Lloyd catches him off. And you know what? It's again another so disgusting. You have that reset on the pike. When you get that first kill, you have about 20 seconds to use it once again for free. And now he's 5-0-1, and I don't know what is happening to KLH.
KLH had the right idea. They wanted to maximize the Rift Herald, and knowing the fact that, okay, we just killed Rocky, it's fine. The problem is, I felt like the fight would have ended differently if the Lamb's Respite wasn't used earlier, just so as to save the Kindred, if the tower juggle was done more efficiently. I felt like the fight could have gone differently at that time, but KLH, Ascension Gaming rather, because of that collapse, they managed to punish them wanting that tower, but they still get a tower. But at this point, it's just so crazy to think that we have a 501 Pike in our game. Rich right now, giving riches to the rest of the teams from Ascension Gaming.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you said. I feel like it's going to be at least a bit more. Well, you know what? Let's just hold that thought first, because there's going to be Shiro spotted out. He was not consumed by a Rocky. as he was able to use that ultimate of his. But I do have to give a lot of comments here to Ascension, or good comments rather, that they are forcing out these ultimates in not so important skirmishes that is allowing Ascension to kind of find these slight openings to just abuse that fact. Like you said, Caspiel did use his ultimate there to save himself on the top lane when they dove Rocky, and then after that, they just knew there was no Lamb's Respite. Now, they know that Shiro doesn't have his ultimate for a couple more seconds, so maybe there's something here, as once again, Lloyd and G4 do have their respective ultimates.
Indeed. Split pushing Tom Kench. Well, anyway, going back into the game, I'm actually very... well, the plan was for KLH. Nothing's happening. Nothing good is happening with this laning phase. Let's start to speed things up. Get that top side so that Shira has more space to move around the map. Try to get that split push. But it seems that Tom Kench is like the answer based on what I'm seeing so far, especially his build path as well. RH is going to be staying here in the mid lane with Superior.
Yeah.
But yes, the intention was to open up the map for a more proactive place for KLH, just so that they are not congested into one area, just so that Azir cannot rotate immediately. They could surprise Ascension when it comes to making picks around the map. But at the same time, it's so difficult because you do have the Abyssal Voyage, rather, in response to this, just so that they get some sort of equalization of numbers advantage, if you will.
Yeah, right now, I feel like KLH's composition, they've been trying to do a lot of rotations, right? But I feel like their composition isn't really built for that type of playstyle. If you can see, they actually don't have much in terms of initiation. Yes, I know that they do have the Rakan, but after that, they have to just kind of rely more on these, I would say, skill-heavy rotations from the Aurelion Sol and the and our ADC here on Azora Vecchi. But I was actually looking if they're going to initiate upon that, uses the passive to get his own sand tower on the mid, and G4 has a little bit of control here. Just to finish what I was saying there, is that I feel like they're going to be looking at more of Ascension kind of making a mistake or forcing a fight, rather than KLH forcing a fight themselves, because if you look at the Heimerdinger, he has to set up towers to make the most out of his skills, right? But if he doesn't, it kind of makes him into just, you kind of just look at him throwing bombs with stuns, and then maybe a little bit of rockets, and then he has to go back and reset first, wait for the cooldowns. But for Ascension here, they have a misfortune who can just deal, sustainable DPS, which is, I think, a bit more of an edge here for Ascension. And I think that's why KLH is having a very difficult time in trying to, find some opening here.
Indeed. There's a lot of setup to actually do for KLH to make things work, especially you want to use that mobility and surprise attack coming from that Aurelion Soul. A lot of consistent damage as well coming from the mid lane. But so far, this is what we were talking about when Ascension comes into the mid phases of the game. It's just all assembled like a puzzle piece. They have that Infernal Drake, they have that Mountain Drake, and they're just trying to consume, or rather overwhelm, KLH with macro play rotations. Sort of very risky wave clear for the side of Kuala Lumpur Hunters, if you think about it, because it's a little bit short range. They might be in range for some very scary plays from Ascension, so we'll have to see. Superior.
Pods out the pike and, just sidesteps the hook right there. One thing that you have to also take, I feel like we have to take note here, is that as Ascension just slowly breaks down these towers against KLH, the biggest thing is that KLH needs to put more vision. I feel like vision control is important for both, but much more important for KLH because once again, you just go back to that fact that there's more global present or semi-global present ultimate here for Ascension. Again, like you said, the Abyssal Voyage and Lloyd with his ultimate. It's going to be very tricky for them to kind of find some openings here. So rather than maybe fighting in a jungle that's not warded, just go push a lane and not actually fight for an objective. But, I mean, that's a terrible idea for me, but you know what I'm saying.
Wow, no contest whatsoever. A lot of priority on the Baron side, on that river side, to establish more vision. And because Ascension Gaming knows that they are in the lead, they're pretty much confident, especially that bot side was shoved towards inner turret. They were confident enough to take that with no contest whatsoever. This just makes things more complicated for KLH. But in terms of gold equalization, they're still trying to keep up with the lead in gold wise, but in terms of like finding opportunities to pick someone up, it seems that Ascension Gaming has a lot of focus to not let that happen.
Yeah. But at least now, in terms of itemization now for Kuala Lumpur Hunters, for Zoravecki, he already has the Zonius Hourglass, so he's not that easy of a target now. I mean, they'll have to work a little bit harder for them to take him down, but they do have some pretty good damage as well on the side of Ascension. If you check out the itemizations for Lloyd, he has a Dustblade of Drakthar. I mean, 25 minutes in for a jungle, that's not really the craziest of timings, but the good is just, he just does so much damage. And look at that. Flashes over, spots out Shiro, and immediately from the get-go, a quick, clean, and I wouldn't say painless, maybe painful pick-off.
It looked very painful to me, Asarai. But those are the things where it's so difficult because they opened up the map so that Shiro has more room to push some waves, to split push, but it seems that they're not allowing that to happen. Easy pickings, Caspiel.
Oh, he's spotted out. The damage, the Tom Kench, look at the slaps, he consumes it, he's gonna force the ultimate, but no! Doesn't even have to, because, you know, he the baller, man, he's gonna be able to take it down. And you know what, I say fire a lot, but this composition from Ascension is total water. Yes.
Total water.
Because Tom Kench and Pike.
The water composition.
Yes, exactly.
Nicely done, Asarai. But yes, you can see how painful in the head Rocky is already. I mean, we mentioned how Rocky is so good at carry champions, but we saw that Tom Kench this time around, he used it still as a carry still. But Azora Becky will be chilling and clearing at the top side of the map. Again, it's so difficult knowing the fact that if you're alone, Ascension Gaming is just going to capitalize on that just because they can. They have established a lot of map control already.
Yeah.
A lot of objectives being taken as well. So I'm pretty sure they're eyeing this Baron. And the more picks that they have, the more, the more opportunities they have on the map that opens up.
Something I think I wasn't able to mention is that, if I'm not mistaken, Rocky as a Tom Kench has percentage damage. That's why he's also good in being able to counter out these sort of tank type champions. And also one thing that I kind of want to add here is, I believe watching Ascension Gaming in their Thailand qualifiers when it was still 8.14, when we were seeing the Galio in the mid, they are really good as a team in kind of using these combo type of champions wherein they have the Nocturne ultimate, and then this was back then, right? 8.14 with the Galio, they just used that Galio to kind of follow up, and they're in a certain sense they're kind of doing the same thing with this type, and it seems like Kuala Lumpur Hunters still is kind of having some difficulty finding a way to counter that with this particular comp of theirs, which, you know, isn't really mobile. They have to stick to one position and, you know, lay it down and then back off and then lay it down once again. But because Ascension is just so fast at these pickoffs, they can't find that rhythm to go for the fights.
Exactly, and the laning phase has already passed as well. So the win condition that they were after in terms of getting Caspiel going didn't really happen for them, and that's the reason why they're having a hard time at this point. They opened up the map for Shiro, but it just leaves more room for the Nocturne, Lloyd on the Nocturne, to actually get some picks, get more money on his pocket. But we'll see, Baron being taken right now. KLH, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do when they come for you? Oh, here it is, the real insult, Disc of Destruction! He actually goes in, Caspiel has to back away. Nocturne with the Paranoia activates it, and oh, who gets it? The Baron, stolen, pushes it back, and they're now going to try to get away, but the Misfortune ultimate shreds them down. Caspiel is no more, Rakan as well, and two members of KLH have been immediately popped from the get-go. Rich is looking, you know that he wants to. He's the support, but he has dreamed to be a carry, and he can actually do it. Rich is looking for that opening, hooks in Shiro, but it's really not gonna happen. Swims in, dives in, like Jaws from that movie. Dan, he's looking for the killer. Zora Becky is trying to run away, puts down a turret just to back them off, and now they're trying to back away, and Rocky showing his, I would say, utility here. Even with the damage that he has, he can still gobble up his own teammates and put him into, you know, in the safety line and still back off. And with that, Baron, 2 kills, 2 turrets, or 2 towers rather, and this is looking to be an Ascension game.
Indeed, Baron so maximized for Ascension Gaming. Aside from the kill on several members from KLH, they managed to take down a bunch of turrets as well in the process. And they'll just take that, go back, buy some items, and come back stronger. And that's the reason why KLH is having a hard time. I know there was an attempt there on Baron to actually get the steal, because it's one of those things that could actually slow them out. Caspiel.
I just want to say that Ascension is now building up multiple Dustblade of Dakar. I'm just going to call this the Stabby McStab build because they have so much damage. The Abyssal Voyage is going to put Caspiel to the Abyss as Lloyd is on a killing spree. This madman also has a Guardian Angel, so you have to take him out twice. What can you do? And with Caspiel down, no lives respite for about 35 seconds, plus a man there. And look at the damage from Nixar. Did you see that one auto attack? 1/4 on the tower. And oh my goodness, they're going to force this out right now. There's the ultimate Paranoia once again. Blind will be the members of KLH. And once again, Misfortune goes in with the ultimate. Activates Pike as well with the follow-up. And Shiro is trying to just be a frontline, but he can't as Rocky gobbles him up. What is happening? Ascension, 17 kills to 3. And this game number 1, like I said, is looking dire straits for KLH. Inhibitor turret is down, and that inhibitor is pretty much easy pickings.
What an insane game, just as you said, from Ascension. So comfortable. Even though somebody gets picked off, it's totally fine because they are such in a huge lead in terms of gold, items, and map control as well. They have everything right now. Even Air Drake is free for the take. And at this point, KLH really has to think about what's going to happen for next game. Well, they're not giving up just yet, but it looks really dire for the Hunters right now.
Yeah. What I feel like is going to happen right now for KLH is it's going to, like, it feels like these Zoya's Hourglass, it's going to be good for prolonging their lives, but at the same time, it's not as effective as like when you have a Swain with with the Zoya's Hourglass. I mean, they'll have a little bit of damage to come out there, but they're just going to be trying to possibly like make it to 3v5 even though they're not knocked out. But still, like I said, it just goes to just simple terms. It's just gonna be kind of a detrimental item for me right now. It's gonna keep them alive, but at the same time, it's just gonna make it easier for Ascension to just stomp on through with their initiations.
Speaking of initiations, I believe the desk has brought this out. One of the things that is sort of hard to pull off, I guess, is the reliable engage from KLH. I guess it's one of the key things that they didn't manage to secure because there's a lot of things going on for Ascension. They have the Pike, they have, I mean, even though if you land that grenade stun or the stun from the Aurelian Soul, there's already a QSS on the side of Misfortune. So if you do want to try and punish, it might be a little bit too late already because, they already had a hard and difficult time in the early phases.
Silver lining here for KLH is that the Baron buff has already dissipated on the Ascension side. But as you can see, they're going for a 4-1 split push here with Nocturne just going to be on the top side. You know that he can actually just dive into the fight. He has so much range with that Paranoia. It's actually pretty damn disgusting. Anyways, now this might actually be the final fight here. RH is going to be able to connect onto Nixar here. Forces the use on that cleanse. Or rather the QSS if I'm not mistaken. And they're just going to back away. But this is Ascension. They know already they have that huge advantage. So they don't have to go overly aggressive to, to force a fight here. They can just surgically remove these inhibitors and reset. Not really sure what time the Elder or the Baron will actually respawn, but it should be quite soon. And KLH cannot push out of their base.
So much respect from Ascension Gaming after, just as you mentioned, surgically removing the inhibitors away from Kuala Lumpur Hunters. They decided to just try to push the waves and maybe, group up together and make sure that they get the job done. No room for mistakes, if you will, for Ascension Gaming. Take note, just a little reminder, this is a revenge match for Kuala Lumpur Hunters against Ascension Gaming, as they've already faced ASC at GPL Spring 2018 at the finals. It was a 3-1 that time, but this is a different KLH already. They've improved so much in comparison to that, to the previous split. But we'll have to see. Game number 1 right now. Ascension still looking super dominating in our SCA region.
Yeah, but you also got to remember that even though we finished this game number 1, this is a best of 5. Still plenty of time for KLH to, compose themselves, or compose themselves rather. But right now, they actually find a little bit of opening onto Lloyd here, who's going to use his paranoia, but does not have anybody to give him much support. But now, as the Abyssal Voyage comes out, that's going to be a 3-man in the bottom lane. Could be a little bit of opening here for KLH to spot out someone out of position, but that's not really going to be the case. Ascension looks pretty good, and they will just back away 30 seconds before that Baron spawns, and they're starting to put the vision, but at the same time, Superior is going to be trying to put as much vision as possible, as they would definitely want to contest that.
Take note, most of our matches from group stages average around 25 to 30 minutes. Now it's surpassing that. The only match that we saw that reached 40 minutes was a time when Ascension Gaming went up against Mineski. Mineski was already behind, but Ascension Gaming decided to just do the same as what we're seeing now and make sure that they finish cleanly.
Oh no, Superior. He forced himself to use that flash to get away from the initiations. Not really what I wanted to do, as that could be used for, for starting a team fight. But now, both inhibitors in mid and bottom are down for KLH, so they have a very limited amount of time to try to contest this Baron from Ascension, and they have begun it. KLH, they know what's up. They're going to try to put some vision over that, but look at the shred on that Baron. Definitely a quick objective for themselves. G4 goes over the wall. You know he wants to start a fight, but nothing to be had. And now, my goodness, this is going to be a Baron on this push. It's going to be difficult.
Exactly. Looks like they are having Ascension Gaming, again, playing very safe, very textbook style, waiting for the Baron to spawn. Okay, that's the time. You can see in their inventories, there's a lot of defensive items already, but Nixar, so great, leading the charge.
Oh my gosh! Ooh, did you see that damage?
That was painful, Asterai.
He just lined it up.
Lining it up, I mean, that's a whole ton of gold and items in their inventory already. Baron buff on their side as well. Decent wave clear for KLH, but when I say defensive items, they've got a lot of magic resistance on Ascension Gaming side. They can pretty much tank the initial burst of damage from KLH.
Man, I am not feeling too good here for Caspiel as he goes down. Easy pokes from G4, and that wasn't even with any I would say ultimates used, and now here we go. They're going to go aggressive. They spot the other one. Rakan goes down, and G4 activates his ultimate, spots out by the well. But in this one, it's just going to be Ascension taking game number one pretty dang decisively. 37 minutes in, 21-4, and that concludes our first match here.
A very dominating performance coming from the side of Ascension Gaming. Normally we see teams that are quick to jump the gun, pull the trigger, dive into the tower once they're like 10k gold lead. 16k gold lead, no! Ascension Gaming is gonna wait for the Baron, and we're gonna just do this textbook styles.
Textbook styles indeed, by the book, and man, what a strong start for Ascension here. Again, it's best of 5 for the semifinals, so I mean, we've said all of what we can, and we're just going to be passing it on to our analyst desk in a bit. So guys, just hold on to your seats, and well, let's see if Ascension can, keep this rolling, or will KLH counter roll that? All right. To actually back away. Caspiel goes in with a dive. 2v1 situation, activates the last fight, but G4 is not there to push him out. He's going to be flashing over the wall, but still get the best possible scenario here as the Last Fight once again activated and Caspel not pushed out from this one. Nocturne activates the ultimate there. G4 goes in, 3-man ultimate, and there you go. Katarina 2.0 with the pike. Just X marks the spot. Damage is gonna be real, and there you go, activates the ultimate, and immediately Caspel goes down. They saw that his last fight was not activated anymore, but now RH, look what he's doing. He is just walking up to them with the fire orbs, and he is toasting them down, but now he has no chance to actually reset the fight because he has no stopwatch. He has only the Roa to get that for 8 in terms of HP, and Lloyd catches him off. And you know what? It's again another pickup. What are gonna do when they come for you? Oh, here it is, the real insult, Disc of Destruction. He actually goes in. Caspiel has to back away. Nocturne with the Paranoia activates it, and oh, who gets it? The Baron stolen, pushes it back, and they're now going to try to get away, but the Misfortune ultimate shreds them down. Caspiel is no more, Rakan as well, and 2 members of KLH have been immediately popped from the get-go. There's the ultimate Paranoia once again. Blind will be the members of KLH, and once again, Misfortune goes in with the ultimate, activates Pike as well with the follow-up, and Shiro is trying to just be a frontline, but he can't as Rocky gobbles him up. What is happening?
On the gaming side, they can pretty much tank the initial burst of damage from KLH.
I am not feeling too good here for Caspiel as he goes down. Easy pokes from G4, and that wasn't even with any I would say ultimates used, and now here we go. They're going to go aggressive. They spot the other one. Rakan goes down, and G4 activates his ultimate, spots out by the well. But in this one, it's just going to be Ascension taking game number 1 pretty dang decisively. 37 minutes in, 21-4, and that concludes our
dahil may sulit na wifi na sa bahay. Mag-load lang sa app. Pwede ka nang mag-Facebook 24/7. Mag-YouTube non-stop. Mag-research, magdamag. Mag-serye babad all night. At mag-video chat ng walang awat. Sa bahay. Kasi sa Globe at Home prepaid wifi.
To the untrained eye, you look like everyone else. But you have another side. Embrace it with a machine that's worthy of you. Stylish on the outside, savage on the inside. Legion by Lenovo, powered by Intel Core i7 processors.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Globe Conquerors Manila. We are going to be heading to our analyst desk right now to kind of talk about what just happened there during Game 1 as Ascension Gaming takes it against Kuala Lumpur Hunters. Of course, now is Amplifier, Crazy Apple, and Chisto. Crazy Apple and Amplifier, congratulations. Your prediction was correct. Game 1, indeed, going to be going to Ascension Gaming. But of course, the more important thing right here is that we have to break down what exactly happened there. I think starting from the drafting phase, things were a little bit more interesting. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
I think I should start this off since I was the one with the off prediction. Ascension, congratulations on their victory. But I did mention that if there was a game when Kuala Lumpur Hunters would want to bring out those weird picks, such as what Amplifier mentioned earlier, those things that they have been hiding up their sleeves. They brought out the Heimerdinger. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out. And talking more about the draft, we did mention that for Kuala Lumpur Hunters, one key for their team is to enable Caspiel to invade. And how do they do that? They pick pushing lanes. I feel like throughout their draft, they had everything going in their favor. They had all the tools they had to get ahead. Aurelion Sol, Gnar, the Heimerdinger bot, all these are pushing lanes, allowing Caspiel to invade.
And with that draft, though, heading into the game, because both sides, not a bad way to go. It's just that as the minutes went along, it was very clear that Ascension Gaming was starting to go full throttle with no point of return, just looking at Kuala Lumpur Hunters kind of in the rear mirror. But what did kind of lead to that build up there for ASC?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we looked throughout the game, it was actually very shocking. Well, actually, it's not really shocking, but I guess I didn't expect KLH to play the way they did in this game because we saw that there were actually mistakes being made on the side of KLH. The very first one, actually, I think was a comms problem because we saw when Infernal Drake was starting to be taken by the side of KLH, it was Caspiel who jumps in and he's left alone towards that early game. He actually dies and the team just leaves him behind. And at that point, we start to see KLH just kind of crumble behind because they go for these weird invades into the red buff of Ascension, but there's no pressure down there at bot lane. They don't have any vision there. And so Ascension just keep punishing KLH every time they try to make a move and invade into that jungle. Ascension punishes them for that. And G4 and Rich were just so crazy this game. They were able to really carry throughout the rest of the game. They were hunting down Caspiel. And I think Caspiel ended with a KDA of around 1-7. I think that's the worst we've seen Caspiel just in terms of on paper. So it was really shocking to see that kind of play from KLH.
Yeah, and we were talking about earlier how one of the win conditions for Kuala Lumpur Hunters is to get Caspiel ahead, or at least get Caspiel to a comfortable position in the game. But Ascension Gaming did not allow that, and also with that draft from Ascension Gaming, the Tahm Kench top lane was really unorthodox. Was one of the things that we really didn't expect to see in the top lane, especially it went against that Gnar. And me and Chiso were talking about before that Gnar pick in the top lane, why we see it so much right now. It's because of the build, the Black Cleaver and the Frozen Mallet build. When you do have that build on Gnar, it just enables him to chase down a melee target, especially the Tahm Kench. But we did not see that because there was that early gank in the top lane from Lloyd to assist Rocky to get him ahead in that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Tahm Kench even built Titanic Hydra, right? Yeah. So like, you can tell he really, even though he wasn't on a traditional carry as we see it in the top lane, he was still able to act like one. And we actually see now this thing where Ascension just have so many different options because you don't only have to get a carry top laner onto Rocky to win the game. You can put it on G4, you can put that misfortune on Nixar, and all of them are just contributing so much into the game, as opposed to KLH where we feel like they might have narrower options here. It might really be all reliant on how Caspiel performs in that game. We actually saw some moments where maybe KLH could shine because this Heimerdinger Rakan was actually going pretty well. They were able to get a couple of kills for themselves in that bot lane, but just Caspiel falling behind so far, and then these weird calls every now and then, KLH just kind of crumble toward that late game. And Ascension, their macro play was just really clean that game.
Yeah. Overall, because at this point in time, of course, this is a best of 5, so there is a tad bit of room for Kuala Lumpur Hunters to hopefully equal back the scoreboard 1-1. But in order to do this, where do you think they kind of need to brush up in order to hopefully take a game against ASC? Because that game, if they can't get any form of polishing or not just polishing, but adjustment for that matter, going up against the Thai squad right here, then I'm kind of worrying for our Malaysian reps right here, especially for you, Chisto.
Yeah, you know, in terms of draft, Arctic, I feel like there's not much adjustments that Kuala Lumpur Hunters have to make. They still secured all the tools that they need. I feel like execution in-game is what they need to change up, because if they play the same way as they did during our first game with the same tools that they had, I feel like it's just going to be a clean 3-0 for Ascension.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't think the draft has to be adjusted. I mean, even though it was a very unorthodox composition, or we haven't seen Heimerdinger or Mage bots in general for quite some time, I agree it still could have worked out. I just think it really falls in the shot calling. I don't know what was going on in the comms there. Caspiel seemed to really want to invade the jungle a lot, but Ascension, we saw, they punished them every time for it. So I feel like maybe we were talking, during the pre-show about how KLH have this tendency to be over-aggressive sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they stay too long on objectives or don't set up properly and just kind of go for it. Maybe Superior needs to kind of pull everyone back and remind them, of the foundation, the basics. Make sure you have that pressure in whatever lane you're going for, and then you kind of like pressure it, and then that's when you set up the vision, and not the other way around, because really they weren't setting up any pressure. They were just going straight in the jungle and then getting punished for it.
Yeah, but I do agree that it wasn't really the draft, the champion picks in particular, that is the problem for Kuala Lumpur Hunters. It is the play in itself. But at the same